You think you know the Young Bucks? Filmmaker James Franck took a journey with them that was too sweet. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talks Inside the Documentary.
Yay! Welcome to Inside the Documentary on Popcorn Talk. I'm your host, Fern Ronay.
And my name is Christy Olson.
And we are chatting with none other than filmmaker James Franck, who traveled along with the Young Bucks and recorded it all, and we watched it and we loved it, and we're going to ask you 9 million questions. Are you
I love it. I'm so excited because you're not entirely a wrestling fan, so I was really excited to get interviewed by Fern because I wanted to see what questions she had, and you're a diehard wrestling fan, so you got the perfect blend. It's both sides of the coin right here.
We're going to cover all the angles.
Oh, yes,
I
we are.
Jimbo.
Yes, I have to say, so I know so little about wrestling that I tweeted, all I know is, Mr. T was in Rocky 3. My husband's like, Mr. T's not a wrestler. I'm like, he's not?
He was in WrestleMania.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
So I know.
We'll give you that one,
Thank you so much. I have to report back. So that's how little I know. But by the end, I was like, I love these guys. I want to find them and I want to hug them. And so did my husband. He's not into wrestling.
Nice.
He's like, these guys are just great. You really captured them. And I was surprised. And so of course then I was so curious about them and I was doing all this research. And I was so surprised to learn that they have this kind of, they're kind of known to be arrogant. I'm like, no, not Matt and Nick. I don't believe it for a second.
Right?
Yeah.
They're adorable. So how, for people just, tuning in and haven't seen it yet, how would you describe it the whole documentary in one sentence?
Basically, it's my a love story to wrestling. Because I was always a wrestling fan growing up, so I wanted to make a wrestling movie that was all of my favorite movies put together, and it was just this is my love story to wrestling. I worked on it for over a year, so it's like a baby.
You gave birth.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So how did the idea come about? How did this all come to fruition? How did it start? What was the seed?
Well, I was filming a pilot for a wrestling show that never got picked up with somebody, Nick Searcy. He was on Justified, and he had a web series that I was an editor on, and he wanted to really do this reality show about wrestling. So we went to Georgia and we went to North Carolina and we filmed this pilot. It never got picked up, and then all the footage is still sitting in an editing bay somewhere, just waiting to be messed with. But I met Matt Hardy on that trip, and I'd already known the Young Bucks, and the Young Bucks were in the whole Booker T stage, just a little bit past that. So they hadn't blown up in New Japan yet, and they were still kind of on the shit list for some companies and some people. So I had met Matt Hardy, and I was like, well, a dream match would always be the Hardy Boys versus the Young Bucks. I've always wanted to see that. And he's like, oh yeah, people talk about that, and they say they're going to do it at a WrestleMania weekend, and whenever WWE runs WrestleMania, other companies run shows that weekend to try and get more eyes on their product, which is a great idea. So they usually try and do a super match that fans really want to see. So when it actually came about and it was announced, Northeast Wrestling is doing Hardys versus the Young Bucks for the first time ever. By that time, years had gone by, and the Young Bucks were now super popular in New Japan and super popular in Ring of Honor and blowing up in PWG and putting people on the map, and all that kind of had subsided. So I was like, man, this is the opportunity. So I texted Nick and I was like, I want to make a documentary about this match. And he's like, let me ask Matt. Matt says it's cool. So then I asked the Hardys, and they were like, we'll try and give you whatever we can, but we can't guarantee we have 2 hours to sit with you that weekend.
Right.
And as you saw from the line that they had of people wanting their autographs and wanting their shirts, they had no time but to sell merchandise that entire day.
Did you have to work with the promoters of the show as well to get access and all that?
No. I just rolled with the camera, and the airport was the sketchiest thing. I thought, I'm gonna get stopped in the airport because it's a decent camera. It has a shotgun mic with the rubber nose or the clown nose like this, so it's not shooting on a cell phone to where you're oh, that guy's got a cell phone camera. It's a legit camera. So I'm walking through the airport, filming tons of stuff in the airport, filming stuff in the airplane, and at one point I went off the airplane and tried to go back on, And the lady was like, no, where are you going? Did you just, and I was like, I just came out here, look, I'll just film from here. And I just got that, like, I need this shot, like, I just had to get the shot of them coming out of the tunnel or whatever. And I was like, oh, I guess I can't go back. But that was the only issue I had.
So it was just
shocked.
you?
Yeah, me, the entire time.
Because it looked like there were multiple cameras.
So I had my camera, and then at the event itself, I hired the guy who was running camera for the show before the show went on. I was like, here's some cash. I need this shot list of B-roll, and anyone you see that is willing to pull aside and talk to, please do. Like the guy at the end who's like, you guys are my gods, basically. I saw that guy in line, and when he was going to meet Jeff Hardy, I was like, this is going to be good. So I just went and filmed that. I had no idea that guy had pulled that guy aside to interview him on his own. It just worked out that way.
That's awesome.
There's tons of stuff that just happened to work. And then it was like me with that camera, or I gave Nick and Matt my flip. I was like, you're going to Japan? I need B-roll of this, this, and this. Bring it back.
And then you
on the
interviewed
old
their
flip
families?
cam. Loved it.
I got to interview their mom and dad, and I got to interview Nick's wife, all at a wrestling show that they were just at the wrestling show hanging out because it was like close to their house. So they were like, oh, we're going to go hang out with the sons, and it just, hey, can I pull you in the office real quick and ask you guys some questions? And yeah, just me and a camera and luck. And
Because
then
it looked like it was out their house. There was more. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they were.
It was literally like the office of
Oh.
that gym / place that they
It felt like they were at
ring.
home. They seemed
Yeah.
very comfortable.
Yeah.
The wife, on the other hand, Matt's wife, because once we were done filming, Matt was like, this is so great. Diana really wants to be in this. And I was like,
Yeah.
I want her in this too. What can I do? And he's like, I could film it on my iPhone and send it to you. And I was like, I'll take it.
Oh,
You know?
wow.
So it was just like making do with whatever I had to do what I did.
But it couldn't have been that easy, Jade.
Oh, man.
Come on now.
It was a lot of like going on YouTube and like, how do I change this, or how do I stretch this, or what can I do to make this work? Like that cartoon, that was solely because
My
like
husband loved that.
I loved that. Was like one of the cartoon and the stop motion were my two favorite things that I did, because it was literally like something I'd never done before that I always like wanted to do, and I always wrote in my notebook like this would be cool to do, that I like took the time to like sit and do it, and I got to put it in my first film and be like, look, I made that from like concept to execution, and that was like
effect.
It was so cool. And like literally like we were in the airport, he was telling the story about taking the wrong bag, and the carousel's going and it's squeaking and the audio is terrible and it's dark, and I'm like, what do I have to cover this? What B-roll can I get right now? And when it was all said and done, I was like, I'm gonna make a cartoon and just like make it how I see it in my head, and that's what I'm gonna do. And then when like the stop motion thing for Booker T, I was like, how can I get away? Because I don't have any rights to WWE footage,
Of course.
and I don't want to get sued. And what can I do? Oh, I got a lot of toys. All right, let's do something with the toys, and I loved it. It was so
It was
much
really
fun.
creative.
Yeah. Well, and another cool kind of concept thing that you did was you used the guy's tweets to sort of help tell the story. Where did that idea come from?
So there's an old documentary that Doug Benson did called Super High Me, where it was like his version of Super Size Me.
Yes.
And in that, they had tweets pop up, but this was like when Twitter first started, so everything was very different. But I was like, well, that's a cool idea, and that'll be a good way to like move the story along and cover things I don't have, but also give people watching it like the feeling like, oh, we're on this journey with them. Like, oh, cool. Like, I'm on Twitter right now. I'm going to tweet. Like, oh, yeah, that's funny. I remember reading that tweet. So it's just like another way of like, well, what can I do to cover up something I don't have?
Right.
Like that works, and that moves the story forward. That's what I'll do.
It's very
So.
creative. And so did you knew them before? How
Yes.
did you know them?
So I started going to independent wrestling shows and wanting to help, and I would buy tickets and just sit in the front row and watch people wrestle, and I saw Matt Jackson hit the move like in the documentary at the beginning when it's like where I met Nick Jackson. The move that Matt Jackson hits, he calls it the worst case scenario, where it's literally like he tucks under the guy and like he looks like he's about to go face first in the mat, but he tucks under the guy and he makes the other guy go face first in the mat. It's a quesadora roll for
Wow.
those who are wrestling fans that know what a quesadora is. And that blew my mind. So like I saw it, and he literally like got out of the ring, and I ran up to him. I was like, "That was the coolest move I ever seen." And he's like, "Thanks, man." So the next show, I'm bringing my video camera, and luckily I like got a shot of it, and I just started to film like, "Oh, this guy has cool matches. I'm gonna film this." And then like I got to know them because they ran their own wrestling promotion, and they're like, "We're gonna book a cameraman. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, perfect. I'm about to buy a brand new camera. It's legit, like a big Panasonic, nice like film camera." So they're like, "Oh, cool. We want to book you for our high-risk wrestling show to come film that." And, I made friends with them, and they have another brother, Mal, and then the Cutlers, and just the wrestling web. That's how it works. There's just so many people you meet in wrestling. Christy is learning that now.
Yes. Oh, man, I can't even keep all those sweaty men straight.
And they are sweat, and they are talented. Like, so now I have a whole new appreciation for wrestling, but they make what they're doing look like it's hurting them and the other person without really hurting them.
I think the big goal is to not hurt each other. But yeah, like, things happen, and like...
Right, but to normal people,
yeah,
I'd be dead.
Definitely. That's my favorite thing about wrestling. Like, not having someone die when you hit them or drop them on their head is like, oh man, how did you get up from that?
Well, yeah. Is all that blood in the match with Candice LeRae, was that all legit?
That was all legit blood. That was all her blood.
I thought for sure it was blood packs.
No, that was all her blood.
Because they do that too, right? Like, that's what I learned in The Wrestler, the movie.
Yeah, fake blood doesn't look as good because it, like, doesn't sit right, and they're already all sweaty, and it's not like a movie set where you're like, fake blood, okay, cut, blood them up real quick, like, all right, go again, like, you're wrestling. So it's real blood, but it's just, like, cuts and dabs. Like you said, in The Wrestler, when he makes that razor blade and cuts himself, it's just, like, the difference between, like, cutting yourself and, like, cutting yourself. You could look at old wrestlers that had like Abdullah foreheads where they could put a quarter in like the divots in their forehead from just like gashing their head so much, or like New Jack. So, but luckily, the Bucks are pretty. They do a bunch of flips instead of bleeding everywhere.
It's a little easier to watch, although we love it all.
So how long did it take from inception to the end of filming? Because you went with them on that trip.
I went with them on that trip. That was a weekend, literally, and it was like we flew out from Ontario together, and then we went, to Dallas to New York, and then they all took a limo, literally, like the Hardy Boys, both their wives, Nick and Matt, Brodus Clay, and Kevin Owens. Was Kevin Steen back then.
Right.
All in one limo, and the limo driver, like, it's not in there because I edited it all pretty good, was pissed. Like, we're not all gonna fit, guys, because they thought I was going too. And it would have been amazing because I have never ridden in a limo in my life. So for the first time to ride in a limo with like all these like legendary people you grew up watching, and be like, oh yeah, it's my first time in a limo, guys. Like, that would have been amazing.
It like the funk is on our roll.
Yeah, and then I'm like, oh man, like, imagine the stuff I could be filming in that car, So, like, I flew out of a different airport than them. They were all taking a limo back to Newark, New Jersey to fly out of there. I was flying out of JFK, so I was staying in upstate. And the limo driver's like, we're not going to fit, guys. You guys are going to have to figure something out. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Kevin, like, have a good night. Meaning, like, I'm leaving. You guys get in the limo. Have a good night. And Kevin thought I was saying, you're getting kicked out. And Kevin's like, oh, thanks. Yeah, I wonder who does get left behind. And he, like, tapped me in the nuts. And I was like, oh, dude, I mean, I'm not getting in the limo because I'm staying here. You guys all go. And he's like, oh, okay. Like, oh, it's cool. And then, like, literally the limo driver had to drive with, like, everyone's luggage up with him.
Oh,
so it was literally, like, probably, like, him and, like, a bunch of wrestler luggage and, like, merch bags. And then, like, all of them piled in the back. There's a picture online of, like, all of them in the limo together. Hysterical. But, yeah, that would have been amazing to have been like, oh, this is my first time in a limo with Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy and Brodus Clay and, holy cow. You know, Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen.
Well, you got to hang with him and you got that little story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, was that little beef on camera?
It is. I have it filmed. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't put it in the extras, but yeah, I have it filmed.
That's a good one
I have
for-
so much stuff filmed. I can make like 2 more documentaries.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Because you have no. It was just roll.
And you
just
have
rolling
stuff
with
for,
everything.
you know, if you ever want to make one about Kevin, you have this
Yeah.
from years ago when he...
Yeah, and he was not wanting. He was like, "Don't film me. I'm not trying to screw anything up," because this was literally like his last show before he went to the WWE.
Yeah.
And there's always that like, "Don't say anything. You got to be careful. They could take it away like that, you know, blah blah." And he's like wrestling Jerry Lawler, who like in the promo of their match, he's like, "I know where you're headed. I'll be seeing you on Monday Night Raw." And it's just like, well, if Lawler's saying that kind of stuff, like, are you sure? So I filmed stuff with Kevin. I didn't go like ridiculous, and I didn't try to like blurt it like, "Kevin Owens last match. Check this DVD out."
Yeah.
I might have sold more copies if I did that, but I didn't want to do that. And like, he's the only guy that didn't get a lower third. Like, I didn't give him a lower third that said his name because I didn't want to put Kevin Steen with like at the time it might have been like Fight Steen Fight
Yeah.
or Kill Steen Kill, you know. And then like when it came out, he was Kevin Owens, and I was just like, I'll just leave it. Oh, like, look, he's there. He knew I was filming him. That was one of the big things, because when I made the rough cut, I gave it to Matt. I was like, go home and watch this with your brother. I really wanted to watch it with them so I could judge like how they felt. I've still never seen it with them, which is kind of crappy. I would love to see like their reactions to things. But I was like, go home, watch this with your brother. Tell me what is okay and not okay. Like, my things, I think Kevin's in it. If you don't want him in it at all, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board and start all over again, because it would have changed the entire story.
He was a big part of that weekend.
It was like the friendship and like the brotherhood, and now like we're so happy but we're so sad that like in the van, that was literally like, oh man, we're about to get in the car, and I just suction cut my GoPro to the window and prayed for the best, you know. And like, that's why that audio might not be the greatest, you know, but it was literally like them in the car. Oh man, this is our last ride, Kev, you know, like who are we gonna brag to about selling all this merch, you know? And then like when you start to get pay-per-view checks, you're gonna be bragging to us, like, you know. And it's like so crazy to see all that coming true now. Like, I'll be at Money in the Bank this weekend in Vegas, and I'll get to see Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and Cesaro and, you know, other people that I worked with in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and on independent shows, like now getting their chance and like proving to average wrestling fans like, we could always do this. And by the way, there's all this other stuff that you guys don't know about, which like wrestling fans nowadays, like, you have YouTube. For you not to watch other wrestling, it's ridiculous. Like, go back and watch old wrestling, watch World of Sport, watch old stuff, just because you can. Like, when I was growing up, it was like literally like tape trading. It was like, what kind of VHS tapes do you have? Cool. Can I borrow those? You know, what kind of tapes do you have? I got the double VCR, and we're going to dub this guy's tape. What? You know, and you'd spend 6 hours trying to copy a tape and be like, well, now I got WrestleMania 5. I could just watch that over and over and over and over.
I can
You
just
know?
picture all of you guys at about 12, all of our wrestling guys here, like trading the tapes.
There's a
and
lot
like,
of us.
oh, my
That would
mom
be
won't let me
funny.
watch past midnight.
Imagine like After Buzz WWE camp with like all of us like young and just like, oh, that would be great. Hear
So
that,
were you
Kevin?
on pins and needles after you gave it to Matt? And were you
Yeah,
like,
I was just like, oh man, I hope.
and then what was
everything's
the
okay.
react? Did you get?
I got like, I got DMs. I got like tweets. Hey man, like, I watched it. I loved it. It's amazing. Like, we really want to get Dana in there. Like,
okay.
you know, and then Nick's gonna watch it, and then like Nick watched it separate from Matt, you know. So, but they all liked it, and they were like, oh, it's a go. So the only thing I really had to add was Matt's wife, and then go from there.
Perfect.
So I was happy.
Do you know if Kevin Owens has seen it?
I don't know if he's seen it, but
Or any of the other guys?
I heard through Sam Roberts, because I sent him a copy when it first came out, and he was like, oh, I saw him at SummerSlam before, or no, wait, Hell in a Cell? Whatever show we had at
Here
the
in
Staples
LA.
Center.
Yeah, it was Hell in a Cell.
I was like, hey. And like, I tried to interview him for this at NXT in San Jose, because I was literally like I always have my flip in my pocket, and I was just like, hey, Sam Roberts, you want to be interviewed for my Young Bucks documentary? And he's like, hit me up tomorrow. And anybody who was like, later, I was
Right,
like,
not
okay,
gonna happen.
probably not gonna happen, you know. So I really wanted to get as many people as I could, and I saw him outside Hell in the Cell, and I was like, oh, hey, man, did you watch it? Did you like it? Oh, I loved it. It was great. Finn Balor really liked it, too. And I was just like, you know? But, like, I've never even met him. Ever.
Now that is too sweet.
So like that would be amazing to like see him and be like, oh hey man, you know, I made that, and have him be like, oh cool. You know, like that would be awesome. Like, oh, I have all your action figures, but nice to meet you.
What about the other wrestlers that we see? Like Booker T, it seemed like that was maybe gonna be a tense situation. Did you know he was gonna be cool and like shoot the scene at the end?
In the bonus disc is like the original meeting of like before everyone got there, and he's going to get set up at his merch table, and they're like, we're just gonna go shake hands, and I stayed back, but I like filmed it, you know, and everything's cool, and it's all water under the bridge. Oh yeah, maybe I'll book you guys can come work for me. And then like they come back over like, oh see, like it's all just been blown out of proportion, and you know, like the telephone game, you know. So it was cool, but at the end that was all just organic and happened. It was literally like the match had ended, everyone's leaving the locker room and saying their
Maria
goodbyes.
Kanellis is walking by.
Yeah, everyone's shaking hands and saying goodbyes, and Booker T was like, get this on film. And I was like, oh, yes, I will, you know? Here we go. And it was like Macho Man Hulk Hogan handshake style, you know, the Mega Powers unite. And it was really cool. I was like so glad. And it's so funny because then like you see all the other people in the locker room get like giddy and turn into kids. Like Kevin's like, can I be in the shot? Can I be in the background? And then like Jerry Lawler's like getting undressed, and he's like looking for his phone to try and like take a picture, and like it was just so funny how like Matt Hardy's like, oh, this is great, you know. It was funny like how like it's all just washed away because this is wrestling, man. Why have beef? We all love wrestling. Like, why can't we all just be friends, you know? That's what I loved about it.
Well, and that's what really came through.
Yeah, it was like literally like so organic. It was just like, no, film this. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll film it.
So you must have gotten to know Matt and Nick better through this.
Yeah.
But spending a weekend with anybody.
Yeah, we spent the night, I slept on the floor in the hotel room, and they both had like separate beds, and like we talked about like things that like promoters try and get them to like come stay at their houses, and they're like, oh, it's cool, like no pets, and like they're like, no dude, we need a room. Like like back in the day we might have been like, if we're friends with them, like, okay, we'll stay at your house, you know. Like if Christopher Daniels is like, oh, come stay at my house, they'll probably stay at his house. But like the average wrestling promoter is like, oh, I just booked you, never met you, but you know, like we get picked up at the airport from people we don't even know.
Right, that was
you
so
know,
funny.
like that's what happens every weekend to them. Like, that's just so weird.
Did you learn any of that stuff that you didn't already know? Because obviously you've been to the indie shows, you're friends with a lot of these guys, you get their lifestyle. Was there anything that surprised you?
The spray tan in the morning.
Yes, that was my favorite scene.
That was so funny. Like legit. Like that's when, not that I like got giddy, but it was like, all right, Matt, I'm gonna spray tan you, and I was like, where's my camera? And I was just like, hold on a second, dude. And I was like, I need this. Like, this is gold. Like, this is like, if you watch Beyond the Mat, when Dennis Stamp is like, oh, I'm gonna go jump on the trampoline, and he's just like, I don't do any tricks. Like, that was my moment of like, hold on, I need to film this. Like, this must be documented right now. And in the bonus disc, they talk about like spraying AJ in a thong, and he's just like, really, dude? He's like, come on, you know, like, all right. You know, like, but like the camaraderie, they're men.
Great.
This is what they got to do. You know, they got to tan. You know,
It's so great. And the conversation with them and the Hardy Boys in the locker room, I felt like a fly on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
It was so, like, I felt like I was eavesdropping, but their conversation was so...
about like them and their kids and just being dads.
Yes.
See, that's what I really like. I didn't know about
These
that.
tough-looking guys.
Yeah, I didn't know if like that was gonna get X'd or like, no, we can't have like the joke where like he's like, oh, I had a kid first try, shoots and scores. You know, like I was like, I don't know about this. And he's like, oh, I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. And there's like tons of jokes if you watch it that are just like in there that go over people's heads that I'm like, oh, this is gonna kill. And then I like watch with people and no one laughs. But then like Matt's filling up his coffee with sugar for like 2 minutes and everyone's like, look at all the sugar he's putting in his coffee. I was just like, oh yeah, everyone loves the sugar. Like no one cares about that thing that I spent 20 minutes editing correctly. Right. You know, making sure the audio is just right to make sure the punchline hits. No.
The editing process seems so overwhelming. Like you have all of this, probably 48 hours of footage.
Dude, it was crazy.
How many hours do you know how many you got?
A lot, at least a full hard drive.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not even counting like old footage from like way back when that was like there's a promo in there that's literally like it's just B-roll, like you can't hear any audio with it, but it's literally like the first promo I ever shot. It was like they had wrestled that night, and I felt like I kind of got to know some of the guys, so I was like, hey man, you want to talk for my camera? And it was literally like them like, hey, we're the Young Bucks, like we didn't win tonight, you know, but you know, it's cool, whatever, you know. And it was like them and their buddies like, look up, we're gonna be up one day. And it's just like putting that in there, you know, just so I can be like, yeah, that's the first promo I ever shot, you know, this is from like the first wrestling shows. So like not even counting that footage, I have so much, like at least a full hard drive.
Where do you even begin?
It was crazy because in my mind originally it was going to be, this is the Hardy Boys and they grew up like this. They were tobacco farmers, they were backyard wrestlers that started their own fed that became super famous through the WWE. These are the Young Bucks. They were backyard wrestlers that worked in construction to build their own ring with their dad, that ran their own promotion, that made it successful without the WWE. This is their dream match. Mm-hmm. And that's the story I wanted it to be, but when I shot the weekend of footage, I was like, this isn't the story. The story is like their families and like what it's like to be on the road and how it is to not, you know, be the guys on TV every Monday night, but still be the guys that are like selling 1,000 t-shirts every weekend, you know, and like doing, you know, seeing your buddy go to be on TV every Monday night and how you deal with that. I don't know. I tried.
And you're marrying a beautiful girl who we met in the door. So you're going to be a family man soon, a husband soon. Could you imagine being away from her as much for as long, especially when they go to Japan?
Yeah.
It's like 3 weeks, right, at a time?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your sort of personal take on seeing that firsthand?
Oh man, I couldn't imagine doing it with a kid. But like, funny enough, when every year at AfterBuzz you get to sit with Kevin and talk to Kevin. And when I told Kevin, like, my goal is to work for the WWE, he was like, let's change that a bit to make it work with the WWE. Because if you're working for them, you're never home. I love your fiance too much to have you put her through that. He's like, but if you're working with them, you're doing things from here. You're pitching them movie ideas. You're pitching them show ideas. He's like, so let's just tweak that a bit. And I was like, yeah, let's just tweak that a bit. You know, because like he compared it to Ryan Katz, who was a host here, that now is like a head producer at NXT. He's like, he wakes up every day at like 5:30 a.m. and until he goes to bed at, 1 in the morning, he is eat, sleeping, breathing WWE NXT. Mm-hmm. That is what he's doing, and that's the lifestyle you live. Just like they're living wrestling, but like, yeah, like at least they have the luxury to be like, you know what, like we had a good couple weeks, like maybe we're gonna take 2 weekends off from now, or like, oh wait, we're not booked this weekend, like that's cool, like let's do something with the families, or know that like this is my kid's birthday, I'm gonna try not to be on tour in Japan. Like when I had to put that in there when he's like, yeah, my kid was born and like 2 days later I was on a 3-week tour to Japan. Like she's not gonna know who daddy is, but he had to deal with that, and his wife had to deal with that, and their family had to deal with that, and hopefully when she, like, it's funny because in Beyond the Mat, which is the first ever like real wrestling documentary that let fans peek behind the curtain, which is why it holds such a like special place, and like my documentary opens like that documentary opens for that reason, to pay tribute to that. Noelle Foley, who's Mick Foley's daughter, is like 7 or 8 maybe,
wow.
And she's like sitting front row at the Royal Rumble in 1999, like 8 rows in front of me, because we were there on their side, and you could see my buddy Robin in the crowd, as her dad gets hit in the head with a chair like 15 times and is gushing blood everywhere. And like now she works for the WWE and she's totally involved in wrestling, and like she loves her dad, but I would love to know like what she thinks, and like if she really like goes back and watches stuff like that. And to have like both their daughters so young in this now, to see the sacrifices that their dads are putting on for them to make sure that their college is paid for, that their moms are happy, that like, like they're putting in all the work now so they don't have to do it later, basically,
And you made a good point that they have a schedule that's they're away, but then they were home in the middle of the week hanging out with them. So at least they get breaks. It's not like living and breathing.
Yeah, it's not, especially like sometimes unfortunately, like recently, I know like Matt broke his hand, and Nick like fractured his rib or cracked a rib. So I was like, well, I guess we get to go home, you know, like for a couple weeks. And then they were like right back at it. Like, it's not in here. It's not even in the bonus disc, but like during like the end of filming and when I went to the show and I like, got to interview their parents, Nick had like torn his hamstring and he was like still wrestling with the torn hamstring. And he's like, oh, it's really bruised and it's a lot better, you know, just try and keep it elevated and iced. But, you know, and it's like, most people don't walk around.
Right.
You're about to do backflips and like...
Right, and in the NFL, you're like
Yeah.
benched for how, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And they're
so
doing
weird.
backflips with a pulled hammy.
Yeah. It's insane.
Insane.
What they put their bodies through.
Well, and in addition to the family stuff that we really saw intimately with them, they also talked a lot about their faith and their
Yes.
religion. Was that something that you expected to be a part of the story?
No. See, like, well, yes, I did. And I wanted to tell it because, like, I knew they were always religious. And, like, not that they have, like, a bad rap or anything for being religious, but everyone knows, like, oh, yeah, like, they don't do drugs. They don't cheat on their wives. They don't fall into these typical things that you're like, oh, you're an indie wrestler? Oh, I know what you're like when you're on the road. They don't do any of that stuff. They considered that they would be like, we were the nerd crew that like go back to the room and like eat pizza and talk about wrestling and watch movies, you know, like that was them. And like I knew their faith because I've known their parents and I've known their family like all these years, so I know that that's a big deal to them. Like I know their dad is a musician, so when I was like, hey, your dad want to give me some music for the movie, because that would be cool, and like he gets to be like, oh yeah, that's my song in there in my kid's movie. You know,
that's
like,
awesome.
That is
you know, and like I knew that their faith would be addressed, and I just wanted to do it in the right way and not like make it like a lot of people that have seen this new Jake the Snake documentary. Everyone I've been like, oh, what'd you think? They're like, oh, it's a DDP yoga infomercial. Mm-hmm. Everyone has said that, and I didn't want this to be like, oh, it's just them bragging about how great they are and, you know, talking about how God gives them everything because they're so great, you know, just like, okay, well, like, how can I touch on, like they have faith and they've always had faith. And, like, a lot of the times in sports or entertainment, people always find that at the end of their career when no one cares about them anymore and they're like, no, I've been saved, guys. Like, so I wanted to address, like, no, like, these guys have always had faith and they've always put their trust in God and knew that there was a path. And, like, yeah, like, when the times were the darkest and it was like it's not in here, it's on the bonus disc, but they talk about we're on TV working at TNA and we went to Arby's and my credit card wouldn't work and I couldn't buy food. Like, we're national TV stars on TV every week working for the second major company and my credit card won't work. I can't buy Arby's, you know? And like to be like at the airport when we're buying $15 sandwiches and they're like, we're buying $15 sandwiches now, you know? 5 years ago, this would have never happened. So like God had that plan for them of just like, well, maybe this isn't your path right now, so what are you going to do? And like they chose to stick with it and they went down that way and that seemed to work for them and, you know, keep on that path. It's just like me, man. Like I worked so hard and I didn't know where I was going and I was just filming stuff and I was hoping to make a movie and it just happened to be this. And I'm glad it happened to be this. But there was a while, like, when I'd be filming shows and, like, people would be like, why do you keep filming stuff for free? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're never gonna do anything if you're doing things for free. Like, you know? I'm sure we
We've
all
all
get that.
done it. Hosted for free, wrote for free. It's part of living.
It's paying your dues,
Yes.
man, because you never know
Living
what
the
free
dream.
opportunity now is
Yeah.
going to pay off big later.
Exactly.
You really don't.
Exactly.
And
It's so true.
congratulations
Thank
on your
you.
book.
Oh, enough
It
about
is
me.
amazing.
Let's talk about you, actually. You grew up in California, but you were
Yeah.
born in New York.
Born in New York, represent Brooklyn.
Yay.
Come from Brooklyn because that's where I'm
Representing for
from.
not too long and then you came here?
I lived out there till I was 9. I moved out
okay.
here because my dad lost his leg in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he got pinned between a taxi cab and another taxi cab, and they had to amputate it. And New York, as you know, there's a lot of steps everywhere, and you know we had family out here, so we're like, oh, we can get a place without stairs, and we'll just go to California. So I moved out here when I was 9. Yeah, and I've been here ever since, and I love it. I go back.
Yeah.
It's always fun to go back, but it's just like you talk to people out there, like especially up where we were in like Fishkill, New York. You talk to people there, and they're like, "You live in Hollywood? Do you see movie stars?" You're like, "Oh man, we have so much access to so many things here that people have no idea."
It really is the land of opportunity.
It really is.
So do you have brothers and sisters?
I have an older brother and an older sister.
Are they into wrestling?
Not really. My sister will always credit for like I was like her doll, like her living doll when I was a kid, because I think we're 6 years apart, and she'd always make me run off the table and do the Dirty Dancing jump. And like my brother, he was like, oh, wrestling's cool, but he was like a baseball fan, never like big into wrestling, but like they're super proud to see me like stick with what I was working with, and I was just like, oh yeah, no, like I love this, and I just like people. I'll never forget. Let's throw some shade. Let's throw some shade right now. Okay, so my fiance, she's a lawyer, and we were at one of her law things with tons of law people, and one of her law professors is like, "Oh, hi, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I film pro wrestling," and he's like, "Huh, I liked pro wrestling when I was 12, but it's okay." And he like pats me on the shoulder, and I was just like, all right. Yeah. Well, we all wanted to be lawyers and cops when we were younger too.
Right. Exactly.
As we have a lawyer. But I was just like, oh man, what a dick. Like, oh, so because I like stuck with something I was passionate about from when I was a child, I'm immature and I'm not grown up. Like,
no, you're happy.
Yeah.
Reviewing the bankruptcy code at 11 o'clock at night on a Monday. So who's the happy one? I would like
preach
to
it
point out.
from a lawyer herself.
I love it.
Yes.
No, so then, did you study film?
I went to school for film. I never graduated college. I got an internship at a place
Right.
I got an internship as an assistant editor, which led me to Nick Searcy and working on that pilot, and then meeting Matt Hardy and all that stuff, and then like making wrestling connections, and then working here. And I took like film classes, but I never got a film degree. But I definitely learned tons of stuff, especially like it's so funny because like the things that happen to you in life that you're just like, well, I guess this leads me down this path. Like, my screenwriting teacher was a film teacher who's like a legit screenwriter. His claim to fame was he wrote SWAT and Robots. Those were like his two big hit movies. So like, I was going to school learning from a guy who's like, look, I pitched movies that you can go watch in a theater. Listen to what I have to say. And I was like, okay, cool. And then the first day of his class, he's like, here's a questionnaire. How many of these 60 movies have you seen? This and that, this and that. And the last question is, should someone make a movie about your life? Is your life interesting enough to make a movie about? So I was like, I think so. I mean, like, this is my dad's story, and like, this is my story, and I come from this crazy Italian family, which you know a lot about. And then it's a trick question. And he proceeds to tell everybody, like, no one in here's life is interesting enough to make a movie about, guys. Stick to this, stick to that. And I was so pissed, like, who are you to say that?
Yeah, how incredibly encouraging.
I was just like, I'm sure SWAT really drew, like, obviously, like, maybe you weren't successful with stories about your life, so then you had to write a story about a ridiculous thing like that. And I think that pushed me into making documentaries, because I was like, no, bullshit. Everyone's got a story to tell.
Absolutely.
And it's weird how that happened. Not that I don't want to make, like, scripted movies, and I don't have, like, ideas for things that are, like, scripted, but I think that really just pushed me. Is like, no, man, everyone's got a story.
Yeah.
And my first documentary is a short about my dad learning how to walk the third time, because he like lost his leg, he got his prosthetic, he fell and broke his leg, he had to learn how to walk again, and then his leg got infected, and he's still in a wheelchair. He has never got out of it, but it tells like this is his story of just like struggle. And
where can we see it?
It's on YouTube.
What's it called?
Taken in Stride.
Oh, good name.
So I'll put the link.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Oh, I have to watch that.
And that was even before I had this guy as a teacher. That was like one of my first short films. And then like having him as a teacher and that being like, no, this is the trick on the first day of class. You guys aren't all good enough. I was just like, man, really? And then like that class was such a joke. Like he's like, we had like a whole day where it was like, these are movies that don't sell. Don't make period pieces. Don't do this. Don't do that. you guys come in and pitch 3 original ideas tomorrow, okay? And someone was like, it's Titanic with zombies. And he's like, I love it. And I was just like, what happened to don't make period pieces? Like, what did you just say? Like, but it's weird because, like, you learn, like, and then I had, like, one editing teacher that told me, like, always carry a notebook. Luckily, he was my first editing teacher. He was like, always carry a notebook. No matter how stupid the idea seems, always have a notebook.
Nice.
Always have a notebook.
There it is.
You know, and I always keep a notebook in my back pocket just for that. Wow. You know, and, like another editing teacher that was just like editors are basically turd polishers, you know? It's just like, what can you make out of this? And then, like, my first job as an intern at Little Bonanza was like, here's a bunch of scrap footage, make something. And I made, like, a web episode for Nick Searcy, and he was like, this is good enough to put on my web series, and we were going to throw all this away. And then I won best editing at the college for it. So I was like, okay, well, making something out of nothing is definitely something I'm good at, you know? So which is why, like, in this, it was just like, well, what can I do with this? Well, what can I do with that? So
it's amazing.
That's so interesting.
Amazing.
And this will not be your final documentary, then,
I'm
we
working
assume?
on a documentary right now.
Oh,
completely
surprise.
Changing tracks. It's about IVF and egg donation and fertility. Because my fiance, she's an adoption attorney, so she helps people get babies. Her cousin fell into an unfortunate thing where she went through early menopause, so she wasn't able to have babies. So they were trying IVF, and that wasn't working. And the next step was egg donation. And she was like, well, I kind of want to go through with this. And Shannon was like, my fiance was like, well, I kind of want to help my cousin with this. And I was like, okay. And she's like, how do you feel? I'm like, we're all family. Like, we're all family. Wow. Why not help? Can I do my part in this and tell this story to let other women know, hey, if you want to have kids, you should probably think about getting checked out? Because Shannon's cousin, whose name is Shauna, said something that really resonated with me. It was like, in any doctor's appointment I've ever had, it would have been 2 extra vials of blood for them to know that I should consider freezing my eggs or know that I might be going through early menopause. Any doctor's appointment ever. Now it's way past that, and I'm going to spend this much money to try and get back what I already had and I could have just put aside. You know, and not only, like, tell her story, but let other women know you're not the only ones out there that are feeling this. Like, there are so many women out there that are dealing. Our boss, Maria Menounos, she's going through IVF and she's putting her eggs aside, you know, like, so.
And she's been public about that. We're
Yes.
not spilling any juice here.
So, like, it's cool to just, like, tell their story, but, like, wave the flag and let other people know, like, this is okay. You know, like, don't feel ashamed about this. Like, this is something that, like, everyone deals with, and the more people that know about it and the more it's addressed, like, it'll be good.
Sounds fascinating. Where are you in the process?
I've just been wrapping tons of footage, just, like, filming tons of stuff, and we just filmed, like, the gender reveal this weekend, and, like, you know, so, like, but, like, this is a documentary where it was like I knew I'd film over the weekend with the Young Bucks, and I'd come home and I'd see what I'd have, and I'd, like, have the year to spend to work with it and go from there. This is going to be, like, I'm just filming it, and when it's done, you know. Hopefully the end is, like, Dad lighting the cigar in the delivery room, you know, is the end shot, but, you know, when it's done, it's done.
Sounds amazing. You're a true documentarian because you see stories everywhere. Some people aren't born with that, like the lawyer who's he just doesn't have that. He's not interested in people. But we are. That's why we're all here. And it's so obvious, and you're going to make many more. I can see it in the future.
I would love to tell your guys' story one day.
For you.
Ooh.
Sure.
True Hollywood story of Fern and Christine. We like it. We like it.
I love it. Well, congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
Extraordinary. It's amazing. Where can everyone buy it and find out more information?
Okay. Follow me on Twitter at The Jimbo Slice. That's TheeJimboslice. That's at The Jimbo Slice with 2 E's. That's at The Jimbo Slice. You can buy this DVD at highspots.com. You can find the link on my Twitter page. I tweet about it often. I have, like, people that are starting to endorse it now, so I'll be, like, sending more tweets about it to just get it out there and get it sold. But yeah.
How do you spell High Spots?
HIGHSPOTS.com.
Perfect.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
It's the Young Bucks' Too Sweet Journey, and this is Inside the Documentary on Popcorn Talk. Can't even talk. I'm so excited. I'm Fern Ronay.
And I'm Christy Olsen. Thank you for hanging out with us. Go watch the Young Bucks' Too Sweet Journey. You will love it. See you next time.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.